Welcome to Health Policy, Organization, and Finance. This is your Week 9 video. Last week we discussed EMTALA. EMTALA is really a law that impacts the uninsured. We don't really have a national uninsured policy. EMTALA seeks to fix some of the problems with the uninsured population, as does the Affordable Care Act, but there's no really uninsured policy in the U.S. EMTALA is a law, and I think now that we're in the last third of the semester, we can start looking at the legalities that underline public health policy. So this week and the next couple weeks, we're going to just start a discussion of public health legal issues that underlie public health policy. Public health law can sometimes be its own course, and sometimes it's woven into a public health policy course or a public health ethics course. If you take a public health law course, you'll focus a lot on public health laws. What I want you to take away from this course is that public health laws are really the basis of public health policies. Usually a law like EMTALA or the Affordable Care Act lead to a bunch of other health policies that grow out of that. A lot of times they can also be interchangeable. So EMTALA is a public health policy, a policy that we serve all those in the emergency room whether they can pay or not. But it's also a federal law, a law that requires we serve people in emergency rooms whether they can pay or not. So they can be somewhat interchangeable. Public health policy is a bit broader in context. So a lot of times we take the ideas from the public health law and use them as policies. So it is now the policy in the U.S. to treat everyone in the emergency room. So public health law also has an interesting history. Like taxes, public health can be really contentious, really political. And to really understand public health law, you need to go back about 100 years and look at some pivotal cases. Now, just in case you don't take a specific public health law class, I wanted to dedicate a week at least to looking at where public health law came from and how it influences public health policy. So this week for your readings, I gave you 2 Supreme Court cases to read. These are old Supreme Court cases, and so they are super boring. So if you have to read a little bit, put it down and come back, please do so. Reading cases is not super fun. However, once you get to the story part of it, usually they're a little bit better. I'm going to give you a little tip for going through cases, just so you can kind of see where you're at. Cases are usually set up in a pretty formulaic way. There's going to be a summary of the decision at the beginning. It gives you kind of an overview of the case. Then it goes back to the background. It'll talk about the legal issues. It sometimes will go into a long analogous cases or other times the court has ruled on a similar situation before finally getting to the decision. Underlying the public health cases this week and public health in general is the police power. So you might see that throughout the readings this week. And if you ask yourself, well, I'm not really sure what the police power is. Very simply, the police power is the power of the states that was not given to the federal government by the Constitution under the 10th Amendment to really establish and enforce laws to protect the welfare, safety, health of the public. So basically the Constitution says under the 10th Amendment, any power that we don't give to the federal government is reserved for the states. And that has been understood that those public health powers are usually found within the state and not within the federal government. often you will see that states pass public health laws and not the federal government. The federal government will pass giant insurance policies or regulatory efforts impacting interstate commerce and travel and taxes, but really like straightforward public health laws, federal government does not do. The reason for this is that the Constitution recognizes that the states have this state police power, which is really a power to impact public health. Okay, so the two cases I gave you, the first one is Union Pacific Railway versus Botsford. And in this case, I won't hide the ball, the judge basically says the right to one's person may be said to be a right of complete immunity to be let alone. So what the court says in this case, and this is a U.S. Supreme Court case, is really no government should be interfering whatsoever within the human body. There's a liberty interest in your own human body, and that's a sacred thing. Now, when you go on to the second case, which is Jacobson v. Massachusetts, you're probably going to find this case more interesting. In this case, you have a person who is basically arguing against vaccinations in Massachusetts in the early 1900s. This is really considered the seminal public health legal case, because what the court says in this is that there is a right for states to invade that personal liberty interest if there is a public health reason to do so. That was way oversimplified, so read the case and read the decision for the nuances. However, the judge says even liberty itself, the greatest of all rights, is not an unrestricted license to act according to one's own will. What this tells us, the takeaway, is that liberty interests are really a big right, maybe the greatest of all rights. And within your own person, within your own body, you have this untouchable liberty interest. However, it can be invaded by something like requiring a vaccination if it is in the public's interest. So, that concept is big and grand and can be enlightening or scary. We're going to talk about it. But this is why we don't have federal vaccination laws. This is why we don't have giant federal policies about public health issues. We have that state police power that says states need to be the ones that do this. Since the Jacobson v. Massachusetts case, some states went ahead and established vaccination requirements. Many of these laws apply to the public or people who work in the public, like children attending private schools, daycares, public schools. They also might require under regulation vaccination if you work in a nursing home or in a hospital or in a healthcare setting. So really my takeaway is that there are these two Supreme Court cases, and they seem to be saying really different things. But what it tells us now is that there's a balancing test that happens. So what does this mean for us in our course? Well, this week I'm adding a new tool to your toolbox. This is your last tool, so you will only have 5 tools. And this tool is called the legal limits. And I know that no one is a lawyer in this course, and that's okay. This is just a tool, just like the other tools in your toolbox, like cost, quality, access, and evaluation. Your discussion board this week is really going to help you think about this tool, so don't worry. What I want you really to do is just think about the reasonability. Is it reasonable for us as public health professionals to have public health policy or law that invades someone's personal liberty interest? The answer is not always clear. So I'll do an example with you, and I'll give you an example also in the discussion board. So let's say the state of Vermont bans smoking outright. Vermont passes a law and says there's no tobacco to be sold, traded, passed along, given as a gift, smoked, eaten, chewed on, anything. No tobacco allowed in Vermont whatsoever. Well, so costs. Yeah, this would probably save money, right? Because it would save the healthcare costs involved with smoking and chewing tobacco. Quality, it would probably improve health. Access, I don't really see an access issue here. You might say that less people needing doctors creates more access for other people. Evaluation, well, this is really simplified. We're not really sure if the impacts will be studied. This seems like simple law, so maybe there isn't any evaluation in it. So legal limits. Well, we know this is a big infringement on personal choice, right? A lot of people want to smoke. A lot of people want to chew tobacco. And we do allow other unhealthy choices. We allow people to put other chemicals into their body. We allow people to drink alcohol. So, is it meet the legal limit? It could, right? We don't know of any other states that have completely banned tobacco. So this could be too big of an infringement upon personal choice, personal rights to make a health choice. There's no right or wrong answer here, so don't try to find one. So this week in your discussion post, you're going to all create your own examples, and then in your response post, you'll get to think about whether or not this goes over the legal limit or not. Again, I don't want you to think there are right or wrong answers this week. The legal limit analysis tool is really to make you think about your job as a public health professional, which will entail creating more regulations, policies, and laws to make people healthier. But what's going to be the limit of that job that we do as public health professionals? Is there a limit? Maybe yes, maybe no. Let's think about it. We'll talk about it in week 9. As always, let me know if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. See you next time.